Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Guidant Financial. Guidant is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.guidantfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited today to talk with Jon Harvill. Jon, about 10 years ago, ended up purchasing a business, but he has been dreaming of being a business owner since right after he got out of college. He's had a real passion for travel. He almost followed that into a business, but got cold feet when the airlines were deregulating and ended up going into pharmaceutical sales, made a good living for himself. And then later on was able to leverage what he had done in the corporate world to turn that into the small business that he runs today. So I'm excited, Jon, to have you on and get to talk a little bit about your story because you have a unique story as a franchisee based on the franchise that you purchased. I don't think most people would know that Expedia Cruises is a franchise. So maybe we could start off and you could talk to me about what is this business that you're in?
Great. Well, Jeremy, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here and to have the opportunity to tell our story. So, Expedia is the largest supplier of travel in the world. Pre-COVID, I think did over 100 billion in total
Wow.
sales. Basically, they're a technology company, but they wanted to have a retail presence, and so they purchased a company. Um, Cruise Ship Centers, which was based in Canada. And once they figured out the American franchise system, they began to branch out down here. And it was about that time that I found out about the opportunity. And I had been in other business ventures where I knew that a powerful name going to the opportunities, and this was a completely different industry, but to go to market with a powerful name would really have a strong influence on the opportunity to build a business. And so we pursued the opportunity. I flew up to Vancouver, where Expedia Cruises now is based, went through the discovery day and called my wife halfway into the first of 2 days and said, "We're in."
We're in.
It was just, yeah, we knew that's what we wanted to do because it combined a passion for travel and business that I've had for years. And so Cruise Ship Centers became Expedia Cruise Ship Centers, and then in the last few years has been changed to Expedia Cruises. Now, Expedia Cruises is cruising is our name, obviously, but we are a full service leisure agency. So our office is located about 5 minutes from our home. And so we're right here in the community where we live, and we're able to bring a powerful name with full service travel opportunities to the local community.
Great. Well, why don't we back up, Jon, and start with the origin of your story? When did you first have the inkling to become a business owner? Maybe you could talk to us about that sort of time after you left college and what was drawing you toward it and what took you away from that you came back to later.
Well, okay, a little bit of a confession. So when I was a kid, there was a coffee shop around the corner from my house, and I used to get dressed up as much as I could at 8 or 9 years old, and I would go sit at the bar of this coffee shop and order a cup of coffee and leave a tip. And that was, to me, was an impression of being a businessman. So I always wanted to do that, but I traveled early on. I grew up in Southern California, and my dad took me from what was then a small little airport called John Wayne Airport in Orange County. And we flew up to San Jose, and just that experience of getting on a plane and uh, checking a bag, flying home. I remember flying back and seeing the Matterhorn Mountain of Disneyland and the Pacific Ocean in the distance, and that really struck me. And so that created a desire to travel. And then just my experience, mostly in sales all my life, I've wanted to at some point have my own business for the independence and for lifestyle and income um, opportunity. So that combined, I was in pharmaceutical sales and management for 15 years, and began to look, say, what would I do next? And I saw the opportunity to combine travel with business because when I was in the business right out of college, and airlines, as you mentioned, deregulated, it seemed that, and everything at that time, this thing called the internet was an introduction, a new concept in technology, and so it seemed that things were changing. So as I began to look in it all those years later and realized that not only were travel agencies surviving, they were thriving. And so I saw a real opportunity with the resources that we had at that time to transition and open up our own center, our own business.
So let's talk about that sort of journey. Were you still working at the pharmaceutical company? What was the thing that finally triggered it for you? Was it that you found the opportunity or some other thing in your life happened and you just said, "Hey, I'm done with this"? What was the straw that broke the camel's back here, John?
Well, for me, pharmaceutical sales had a great opportunity and rode the wave, really enjoyed it. But it began to change and it became a little more challenging to have access to clinics, hospitals, physicians. And so that just started my searching of what would be next. And also having those resources, and then with the local opportunity, and as I mentioned before, having the opportunity to work with a big name, those three things or four things, whatever I said, came together and created the timing and the opportunity for me to jump in. And when we jumped in head first. There was no plan B. And so we fully committed to this. And again, it's been 10 years as of June 4th of this year.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So tell me, John, you're in pharmaceutical sales. It feels like some of the winds are shifting, and so you're looking at other opportunities out there. How many opportunities did you look at? Was it just this one that you came across when you were also looking at potentially getting a job? Like, to walk us through from the idea that you had this thought, hey, I might buy a business. What did you do?
hmm Well, so I really kind of locked into franchises because you didn't have to reinvent the wheel. You had the corporate support and the means to build a business. And so, to be honest with you, I looked at travel. I even at one point looked at an airport popcorn franchise.
Really?
Um, yeah, yeah. And so I was just looking at different opportunities and something that would fit. And so when I found for me the Expedia opportunity, it made complete sense.
And what about it made complete sense as you're comparing it to these other options? Like, what was it where you said, hey, these three variables just line up with what it is that I want?
Yeah, the so before I went up to Vancouver for the Discovery Day, they said, "Yeah, you're probably going to imagine three guys in cutoffs in a closet working with a laptop sitting on the floor." Well, I went to the corporate office, and actually, the departments, the corporate building, the executive team were very impressive. And so it was the corporate team, the company that was backing it, the local opportunity with a retail center that was there was a jewelry store in the shopping center where we spent all these years and still do shopping. And I told my wife, I said, if we ever have a business opportunity, this is where I'd want to be. And that's where we ended up. So it was the strength of the corporation. It was the retail opportunity. And because I knew I didn't want to, for me, we wanted to be in a retail environment. And the finance was such that the tools were there to allow us to make this transition.
Okay, well, let's talk about so you decide you might want to buy a business, right?
hmm
Where did you find the opportunities? You just get online? Did you talk to some people? Like, what was the process that you went through to uncover opportunities to look at?
Well, I had analyzed what resources I had, what I would be able to invest. And I don't, to be honest with you, I can't recall who I reached uh, out to at Expedia to pursue this opportunity. But so I knew we wanted a business. I knew the resources we had, and then in talking with them, I found out that it was a good fit on all fronts.
Got it. So probably you were searching online among other things, and this was one of the things that you found. You reached out to him directly, and then it checked the box. How many other things did you look at other than Expedia and the popcorn franchise?
Uh, well, probably three or four. Just looking at various opportunities because we were really ready to make a transition,
Yeah,
but uh, the Expedia Cruises franchise was the only one we seriously pursued.
got it. And you mentioned a few times the sort of resources were there. How did you figure out how much you were willing to invest or had to invest, and therefore sort of how to target in what you were looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the very nature of franchising requires that the franchisor sends you a franchise disclosure document. So, I knew what investment would be required on the front end. And looking at the money that we could invest, I knew that it was a good fit. Because if you look at something like a McDonald's franchise, well, I've heard it's over $1 million to get started. We weren't there by any stretch of the imagination, but I knew with the numbers that I saw that we could make this work. And I reviewed the franchise disclosure document with my attorney.
Yeah. Awesome. And so you just used cash of your own, retirement funds, an SBA loan. Like, what were the things that you used to make your deal happen?
Yeah, we used our retirement funds with the mechanism that would allow us to roll that over,
Yep.
and and did that, and continue to work with the company that originally allowed us to do that, so that we remain in compliance. But it was it was a very little time consuming just by nature of the type of arrangement, but very convenient and user friendly.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the expectations you had for the business when before you started it, and then how it actually sort of played out in the initial years.
Well, we just wanted to hit it running. I had had experience right out of college, as we talked about at the outset of the interview. I had had experience, and I knew basically back all those years prior how travel agencies worked. So I came with a certain level of experience. I wasn't completely green as far as that goes. So we just jumped head first into the business, and we took quickly the guidance that they provided on how to build the business, and we basically went out and told our story to anybody that would listen. We told people what we were doing, and so as a result, we were our first year. We were the number one first year franchise in all of the United States and Canada, and we were the number one second year franchise in all of the United States and Canada. And the third year we were second. So, but yeah, we had a great initial run.
So, is it fair to say that it performed better than you were expecting, or you just didn't have expectations? You just went at it as hard as you could?
Both, but yeah, we went as hard as we could, and took our experience, and hired consultants who were very productive, and we became a strong team. And but yeah, there's a lot of just jumping in, rolling your sleeves up, and going for it, and that's what we did.
Yeah. How has the business grown over the years? Do you have more locations, more people? Like, what is that? How is it different today than it was 10 years ago?
Well, so we meet at least twice a year. on with fellow franchisees and the executive team, and we have an opportunity to build friends. And I've got a great network of Canadian and United States friends who I talk with regularly. Actually, we were in Southern California last week and went and visited a friend with a agency in Orange County, and just kind of picking his brain to see where he has gone and how he's arrived to where he is. And so we network in that way and uh, build relationships. And so some of those people are single franchise owners, and some are greater than 10 franchises.
Wow.
So we're always looking for uh, what we need to do next. Do we need to expand? Do we need to continue to build locally with this center as opposed to purchasing another franchise? So it's all of those things that combine to provide the growth strategy that we are looking for and looking at.
Yeah. Can you reflect back for me 10 plus years before you did this deal? What were you envisioning that you wanted your life to look like as a business owner? What was the life that you wanted that you thought, this is going to give me these things?
Well, we enjoyed the relative independence that comes with business ownership. We knew that there would be work is work at times, and we knew that there could be and would be challenges. We also, to go back over the 10 years, the travel industry was the first hit during the pandemic that we like to call the pause. And so we were the first industry hit and the last industry to emerge from the pandemic and its effects. And so we, as I mentioned before, not having plan B, we stuck it out. We took advantage of the resources that were made available to us through government um, provision, through even some of the suppliers that we use helped us with our landlord as well. And we survived and got to this side of things, consistently evaluating what we need and want to do next. You know, they always recommend that you have an exit strategy. Um, so building our business, we want what were the expectations you asked that we had? We wanted to have a healthy business that was self-sustaining, that was growing, and so we're constantly looking at uh, those issues, those particulars within our business to make sure that we've recovered well from the pause, that our team is growing, our sales are growing, and it's a daily process of three steps forward and hopefully only two steps back on occasion.
Yeah, well, I didn't even think about the COVID implications, but obviously that was huge for the travel industry. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for sticking it out and weathering that storm. Um, Usually those storms come in the early stages of a business, not when you've already been at it for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, John, what does your life look like now compared to what it looked like when you were in pharmaceutical sales and management? Like contrast the good or the bad. I mean, help me understand what life looked like before, what life looks like today.
Well, very basically put, I was a coat and tie for 15 years and had a established route with doctors that I would call on certain specialties. Um, to look back over the last 3 years, we'll say, well, over the last 10, actually, we have traveled a lot. We have been on, I think, in 22, we were on 10 cruises.
Wow.
Um, yeah, we just got back from a 22-day trip to Europe with river cruise and then an ocean cruise, and we're leaving Tuesday for Alaska. So, bottom line, and it sounds great, and we have great opportunities. We're working quite often, sitting on a balcony, booking travel, or dealing
Yeah.
with emails and that kind of thing, trying to justify my existence here. But yeah, so we there's a lot more flexibility built in to this and freedom, and then also the benefits of building a team, being a business manager behind the scenes with your uh, back office situation. So, uh, yeah, we're more hands on, more ownership of what we do, and the flexibility is really nice.
Yeah, you probably have some great travel perks based on what you do. I'm curious if you look at it in aggregate over a year, how often are you traveling? Like how many days out of the year are you out? Because you got to sample the product, right?
Yeah, well, and so that's right, and that's what I say. It's 7 days without a day off, but nobody sympathizes with me on that one. But yeah, on average, I would say once every other month, once a quarter. On average. There are seasons when we're here and need to be here on a consistent basis, but we've just hired a full-time manager a couple months ago, and so we have a great loyal team who covers because when they're gone, we cover for them. So in turn, when we're gone, they cover for us.
Yeah, so you're on a 22, most business owners, at least in the early stages, would think 22 days away from the business. How did that work? So tell us about what did your 22-day Europe cruise look like?
Well, they're both of those were made up of groups, and so as I said, we have access. All the ships, most of the ships, I should say, all of them have Wi-Fi to some extent, so that allows us to work. And the strength of the Wi-Fi on the ships even allow phone calls. So if somebody needs to call us, if we need to take care of situations, then we can do that on the fly. But then we're also working with those groups to help with tours and issues that may arise as we travel. So it's a working trip, if you will, but there's great built in experiences attached to all of them.
Yeah, it sounds like the biggest change for you has been before you were kind of shackled to this particular route that you had to be at, seeing people face to face. And now you get to travel and do the things you love and sort of fit your work in when it works for you, which is
That's yeah, and there are always things to do, but again, with a support network here locally, it gives us the freedom to go out and do those things, whether it's groups we're hosting or trips and experiences that my wife and I are experiencing, that we can bring that information back to enhance our business locally here.
yeah, and you have one of the few businesses where that kind of travel is probably a write-off given what it is that you do. It's
Yes, correct.
fantastic. So, how often are you doing planning for people where you're planning trips for them versus you're actually hosting? Because it sounds like you might actually put together some of these and then you show up with the group to do the trip with them.
That's correct. So, uh, our Expedia Cruises has eight promotions that they do throughout the year, 8 to 9, and they're in different with different lead suppliers and with different themes. And so we're always looking ahead, trying to stay, a quarter ahead of the next promotion so that we take advantage of marketing opportunities and funding where we receive assistance from our suppliers. So there's that. And then last night we were at dinner with a couple that we had sailed with before last fall, and they were asking us, what's coming up? And so we were able to share with them. And uh, Another person who was on that same trip with this couple we ate with last night had a friend who wants to join us for a trip next spring, and so we provide the information for them. So it's a daily working out of opportunities, building new relationships, teaching our team concepts like how to book groups, building relationships 101. And so it's really a daily analysis of where we stand and where we want to go and how we go about doing it. So there are a lot of hats, whether it's the social end of it, the practical end, the logistical end of it. All those things come together on a consistent basis to allow us to achieve the goals that we have.
Yeah. If you flash back to when you were going through the due diligence process with Expedia, you talked
Mhm.
about going to the discovery day, meeting with the executive team. What other kind of analysis did you do? Did you build a budget, cash flow projections? Did you interview other franchisees? Like, what were the things you did to check the boxes of, hey, I want to make sure this thing is right for me?
Yeah, all of the above. Not only looking at the financial end of it and the projections and budgeting, but also in having our attorney, as I mentioned earlier, review the franchise disclosure document to see if there was anything in the legalese that I could be overlooking. And then there was the opportunity to talk with franchise owners throughout North America to find out what they do, how they do it, what their experience has been.
And how did you do that? How did you reach out to them? Did you have a preset of questions, or did you just try to sort of engage them and understand what their experience looked like? What were you trying to, what kind of information were you trying to get from them?
Yeah, I was just finding out, certainly finding people of like mind and experience who had jumped headfirst into the business and also inquiring about their business model. Are they a standalone? Are they a multi center enterprise? And how long they've been at it, what has their experience been, and then through asking the questions, what are the challenges that you face? I could then form questions for the next person. And that continued not only during the discovery process, but continues today when we go to meetings and I network with the fellow franchise owners just to find out, or I have friends that I can call them. And the nice thing about Expedia Cruises, our president, Matthew Eichhorst, is also the global cruise director of Expedia Group. And I could call him if need be, and we could talk, uh, within a reasonable amount of time's notice. So those are the types of relationships that, and who answered the questions that I had leading up to signing as a franchise owner and even going beyond.
Yeah, can you give us a couple examples that have happened over the last 10 years of what you've gotten from those relationships with other franchisees, maybe in a marketing idea that came from it or a problem someone helped you solve? Because that seems to be a really powerful potential opportunity within the right franchise. I'd love to hear some examples of how you've leveraged that.
Well, not only marketing opportunities, how have you done this? If I see someone who we may bring a certain number of couples on, let's say a river cruise, and I have friends who have leased an entire river ship and filled it. So we asked them, how did you do that? How did you arrive at the point where you could pull that off? Also, when we have issues with personnel, um, we've reached out to people who we know have been around a long time. And I can call my friend up in Ontario, Canada, and say, hey, here's this situation. What have you done? When we were hiring a manager, I was able to call other franchise owners and say, okay, in like situation, what did you do? How has that worked for you? What should we know about it? And somebody even sent me a document with some guidelines for a manager that we tweaked to suit our own needs. And we use that as the document that we use to hire our current manager.
Oh, great. I am super curious, John. What is the absolute best trip you've been on as a result of owning this franchise? And tell us about where you went, what it was like. I know this one's going to light you up, but I love travel too. So give me a little taste.
Well, I realized I did a presentation down south and down south Alabama, and somebody asked me, "What's your favorite trip?" And I said, "The next one." But we recently, that 22-day trip that we were on, we flew into Barcelona for 3 nights, and then we got on a river cruise in the south of France and sailed up to Lyon, France. After that, my wife and I flew to Istanbul, Turkey, for 2 nights, and then we got on Oceania cruises. And on that cruise, there were two experiences that I was sharing with the couple that we had dinner with last night. The first one was that we were in Heraklion, Greece. We did not book an excursion. We kind of missed the window and we said, well, let's see what happens. So we got to Heraklion and went out to the cab stand, and there was a guy there that said, you want to tour the island? And we said, sure. He said, how long do you need? And we said, 4 hours. And so we hired him and he took us around. We went through these olive groves and beautiful coastal areas, and we stopped at this building and we got out and he said, come here, I want to show you something. And he took us to a shed that was full of World War II German military vehicles. It was unbelievable. I was sitting right there. I could have sat in a tank, an officer's car. There were motorcycles with sidecars, all from World War II. Um, and that was the first experience in this last trip. The second one was we were in Sicily, and I've always liked the Godfather movies,
Yeah.
and so we did a Godfather tour and visited four sites from the movie, and then went back that night on the ship and watched the first movie that my wife hadn't seen completely, and said, "See, there we were, there it was the scene," and yeah, so that was worth the price of admission.
That's awesome. So you're giving both the pitch for scheduling some excursions and then sometimes for winging it when you get to see some stuff you never would have expected or signed up for.
And even again, talking last night, my wife was sharing with our friends that, yeah, she was a little nervous. Are we going to survive this? Is this guy going to take us out somewhere? We're going to be ambushed. But I had done that in previous travels before we were married, and so I felt confident in doing so, and it just would really turned out to be a nice adventure. I don't necessarily recommend that for inexperienced travelers, but for us, with what we were able to do, it was a fantastic experience. I will add one final thing to that same cruise, is that this ship had a cooking school, 24-person cooking class, latest technology, and we did Mediterranean, Turkish, and Turkish food, and they had a menu, taught us how to cook it, gave us menus and of all the items that we cooked, so that we could bring those home. That was a fantastic experience. So what we're doing with that is we are going to have a local cooking class and launch a group for June of 2026 on the same cruise line that has that same cooking class kitchen.
Fun. So you're going to use your great experience as a marketing opportunity to do something cool in your local community.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. I'm curious, John. A lot of people, when they think about starting a business, they are fearful of the risks and maybe even fearful of the potential stress or the burden. I'd love for you to just share your experience. What has the stress level looked like? And how has that differed from what it looked like for you when you were in corporate America?
Well, the stress level is a more localized, if you will, in that the issues that you face, and there are issues, are in a smaller scope. It's within our store. It's not so much the bigger corporate issues, though cash flow and all of those things become a part of it and add to the stress. But the stress is more localized. There are seasons where you may have somebody who has fallen ill in Europe and you need to work to get them home, or somebody that there's an inability to make a final payment and a cancellation of their cruise or of their land package. Um, so it's just a different level of stress. Though, again, it does exist. Stress does exist with this job, but it's, over 10 years, there's not a lot that surprises us. It's just going forward and realizing that we'll get through this and we'll get to the next level. I'm going through something with the Small Business Administration currently. An emerging leaders class. It's a 6 month long class, and they talk about the reason that everybody gets into a business because they have a strength in some area. There's something that draws them to that. So the people that are looking at the business generally have a reason that they feel competent and therefore confident to enter into what they're doing. And it may be that they're a great numbers person. It may be that they're a great storyteller as far as their ability to share a message related to a product. They may be a great coach. So everybody that seems to want to get in has one of those things. So I think understanding that about yourself and surrounding yourself then with people who are competent and strong where perhaps you have weaknesses helps you to go to the next level and to continue on during the stressful days.
Yeah. So, John, if I offered to give you all your money back to get out of this business and go back to your job in pharmaceutical sales or management, would you take it? And why or why not?
No, I would not, because I love what I do, and again, this being a lifelong dream. Um, Now, if you wanted to offer me the cash to give me a temporary, to get over whatever hump, then we can have a discussion. But no, I appreciate the relationships and the experience that I gained from corporate America. But once you've tasted of self-employment, it's difficult to give that up. Now, during the pandemic, I had to look. We didn't know what was going to happen in the next day with our business, and so I had to consider going back, and didn't. And I'm thankful. So I know, but I appreciate the offer.
How was that emotionally to have that moment in time where you're thinking about going back after having been an entrepreneur for 7+ years?
Um, well, it was one of those things. We looked it square in the face and we realized something has to be done uh, as far as we could see. But looking back, we were able to make it through. And so, yeah, there were some humbling days, some days of thinking, what are we going to do? And we were creative and did some things, little things on the side, and got through it. And here we are.
Talk about that. What kind of creative things did you guys do to weather the storm during a pretty big challenge? Because I'm guessing your business basically went to zero for 12 months.
Yeah, yeah, at least. And people would say, "Well, how's your business?" I said, "It's growing in cancellations." But so we did a lot of gig economy. We did grocery delivery. We did Uber and Lyft to just supplement where we could. And so, yeah,
So
just
that got you through the tough time.
that along with the government assistance.
Yeah.
The assistance we proactively, interestingly, received from our landlord, and then the assistance we received from, in this case, the cruise lines.
What did the cruise lines do for you?
They offered interest-free loans,
Wow.
and so, yeah, it was very, very generous, and so we have since repaid those. But yeah, they knew that the travel industry is a big part of what they do. They need us like we need them, and so they agreed to help us. And it was a burden on them, but we're all here.
I have a good friend who owns a trade show exhibit company. So like yours, they were the very first to get hammered and the very last to come back. And he also
Yeah.
went through those moments of wondering if he was going to have a business. And since then, they have grown back to bigger than ever. And when I've asked him about what the key to that was, he said it was that time away from it and having reset the business to build it back in a different way. So I'm curious, how has the build back of the business been uh, size wise relative to where you were before? And is there anything that you fundamentally did differently in building it back this time from zero versus where you were originally?
Well, there was a ramping back up as we began to emerge after the pause. And so there was a time when it was my wife and I and one other consultant who was coming in. And so I was hands on the daily, working, as they say, working in the business to a great extent. And so one of the transitions I did was in hiring a manager, went to more working on the business. Uh, and then really during that time, it's easy to take your eyes off of the goal, which for us as franchise owners is recruitment. And so we put more emphasis in our recruiting efforts. And so with a combination of those things, we finished last year our largest year ever.
Congratulations, John. That's got to
Thank
be
you.
that's got to be exciting and confidence building when you think, "Hey, we've gone to the brink of zero and come back." It's hard to feel like there's not many things you can't tackle.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We're grateful to be here.
So, what's next for you and the wife and the business?
We're continuing to grow. We have a goal. We'd love to have 40 consultants at our local center, and then we'll reevaluate and look and see if we're going to expand or continue uh, to grow where we are. And then we've got, as I
Consultants are like
mentioned, we have.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Consultants are like salespeople, or
Yes, yes, they are. They're travel agents,
travel agents.
and in our model, they're all independent contractors. So there's a level. There's explicit flexibility built into that model, and so we are hoping to recruit and find those people who are committed to spending as much time and to grow a business because the opportunity is huge in the business and barring another uh, pandemic or significant economic downturn, uh, the growth projections are enormous based on surveys with past travelers and also the investments that the cruise lines are making on new, as we call it, hardware or new ships, new
Yeah.
resorts being built. And so, um, yeah, though all those factors.
Those ships are insane. They're like skyscrapers that float in the water, an entire city built into a boat.
We just last fall got off of Royal Caribbean's largest ship, which is can accommodate 7,000 passengers and
Wow.
3,000 crew members. But it flows very well, and the technology, it's a water park on the ship, and the production. They had the Wizard of Oz, which I have never seen that level of production on a cruise ship in my life.
Yeah. Well, John, I'm curious now that you've been through the process of looking for and then finding and ultimately moving forward with buying your first business. When you look back at what you've experienced, what advice or insight would you give to an aspiring business owner who maybe has the dream but is just barely starting down the process of trying to figure out what it is that they want?
I would say uh, I would say that know what you're coming in with, knowing what your flexibility as far as how long you can survive financially without a paycheck, depending on the nature of the business. Um, know your marketing and surround yourself with people you trust who have been there, who can answer those questions. What are your successes? What have been your shortfalls as far as setting up the business? Um, and some people come into the business with a full pension. Some people come in and a spouse or a partner continues to work, and some people come in and put everything in. And so, knowing what those limitations might be based on the model you're looking at, and then coming in with your eyes open. And there's plenty of opinions out there and surveys and reviews on all of the franchises, and finding something that fits who you are. Are you wanting to be in a business that requires you when somebody doesn't show up to be there, or that requires long holiday and nighttime hours? Those are the kind of things you need to look at the front end and say, okay, this is what we want to do and we want to jump in.
Awesome. And an extension of that question, John, what is the biggest, when you look back at the last 10 years, what's the biggest mistake you think you made with the business? And what have you taken away from that mistake that maybe some of these aspiring business owners can learn from?
I think the biggest, what we did initially, we jumped into marketing strong. We were commended in front of the entire organization for our marketing spend. And I think that allowed us to jump out early and have great success. But eventually, those commitments caught up with us. And so we had to really reevaluate. So I would have taken a more steady plotting approach to marketing as opposed to jumping in 150%.
Is that because you feel like you wasted a lot of resources on things that weren't working, and therefore it would have been more efficient and you would have more easily been like, help me understand what the going a little bit slower would have done for you?
Well, I think what it was money well spent, but it was a lot of money that caught up with us, and we had to reevaluate because if we would have taken a slower approach, we would have retained more of that cash and would have uh, been able to use that to spread out over more reasonable marketing, which is you earlier asked what we had done, what we've learned, and how we have altered. And one of those things that we have changed is our marketing approach. We're doing significant and consistent outreach to the community through flyers and social media and so on, but on a much more sane level, if you will.
Yeah. Well, you have an entirely Instagrammable business because travel is like the number one thing that people want to take pictures of and put on social media. Um, John, I really appreciate you joining us. I'm always super inspired by a business owner who has figured out how to work a personal passion of theirs into what they do. So a 22-day cruise through Europe while you're still managing your business sounds fantastic. I think that's going to be inspiring to a lot of people. So thanks again for taking the time to be here. Really appreciate it.
Again, thanks for the opportunity to share our story.
Great. Before I let you go, is there anything that you would want to share with our audience?
I would just encourage those who are looking at opportunities of self employment to uh, be courageous, be wise, and do your due diligence, and realize that there is fear uh, associated with those big decisions that can lead to great reward. So um, continue to pursue your dreams and surround yourself with good people and good counsel, and go for it.
Great. Thanks, John. Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, you know where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.